Battle of Valverde, Civil War chaos in New Mexico. The Battle of Valverde, fought February 21, 1862, was a bold Confederate attempt to seize New Mexico and ultimately California. But it began with exploding mules, stampeding cattle, and a desert standoff that turned into a chaotic clash. Led by Brigadier General Henry Hopkins Sibley, the Confederate Army of New Mexico faced Union forces under Colonel Edward Canby near Fort Craig in Socorro County, New Mexico. Henry Hopkins Sibley, born May 25, 1816 in Louisiana, was a career military man and a dreamer. He envisioned a Confederate empire stretching westward to Santa Fe, California, and even Mexico. With 2,500 Texans in his Army of New Mexico, he launched his campaign in early 1862, aiming to capture Fort Craig, then Santa Fe, and finally California. But standing in his way was Colonel Edward R.S. Canby, born November 9, 1817, in Kentucky. A seasoned Union officer, Canby commanded 3,800 men at Fort Craig, though only 1,200 were regulars. The rest were New Mexican and Colorado volunteers, plus 500 local militia. Among them was the legendary Kit Carson, commanding the 1st New Mexico Volunteers. On February 13th, Sibley camped 15 miles from Fort Craig, hoping to lure Canby into open battle. By the 20th, bored and impatient, Confederate Colonel Thomas Greene tried placing artillery on hills opposite the fort, but Union fire suppressed them overnight. Then came one of the war's strangest moments. Union Captain James Creighton sent 2 mules loaded with barrels of gunpowder and lit fuses toward Confederate pickets. Unfortunately, the mules were too well trained. They turned around and walked back into the Union camp. The resulting explosion caused no Union deaths, but it panicked a Confederate supply train, sending beef cattle and horses stampeding into Union lines, reducing Sibley's rations and cavalry transport. The next morning, 4 companies of the 2nd Texas Mounted Rifles, led by Major Charles Pyron, advanced toward Valverde Ford. Union scouts spotted them, and Canby dispatched Colonel Benjamin S. Roberts with infantry, artillery, and cavalry. Realizing the artillery slowed them down, Canby sent Major Thomas Duncan's cavalry ahead to secure the ford. As dawn broke on February 21, 1862, Major Thomas Duncan and his Union cavalry reached Valverde Ford ahead of the Confederates. Dust swirled, hooves thundered, and Duncan's men blocked the passage, staring down the advancing Texans. The Confederates, caught off guard, quickly called for reinforcements. They set up defensive positions in the dry riverbed of the Rio Grande, hoping to hold the ford. Reinforcements arrived, more Texans, but armed mostly with shotguns, which had devastating close-range power but were no match for the long-range Union rifles. By early afternoon, Colonel Thomas Greene himself arrived with fresh troops. He was bold, brash, and ready to break the stalemate. Spotting what he believed were inexperienced New Mexican volunteers, he ordered a cavalry charge. But the Greene troops weren't green at all. They were battle-hardened Colorado soldiers. The charge was a disaster. At least 20 Confederate cavalrymen were killed, and almost all the horses were shot down. The riverbed was littered with bodies and broken saddles. By early evening, the Union appeared to have the upper hand. Colonel Canby, sensing victory, made a bold move. He shifted his forces to strike the Confederate left flank. But in doing so, he weakened his center, a fatal mistake. Greene saw the opening and pounced. The Confederates launched a 3-wave assault on the Union center. The attacks were ferocious, driven by desperation. Their water supply was nearly gone, and the only source lay behind Union lines. The Union center buckled. Though the right flank tried to advance, the Confederate pressure was relentless. Canby's men began to retreat toward Fort Craig, exhausted and outmaneuvered. Just as Sibley prepared to order a final assault, Canby requested a truce to retrieve the dead and wounded. Sibley agreed. Under the cover of this truce, Canby retreated with his forces back to Fort Craig, leaving the road to Santa Fe wide open for the Confederates. Reported losses: Confederates, 187 casualties, Union, 264 casualties, plus 200 deserters. Canby, in a bitter post-battle report, blamed Hispanic soldiers for the defeat, an accusation widely criticized. Meanwhile, Kit Carson's regiment saw minimal action, watching the chaos unfold from the sidelines. The Battle of Valverde was a Confederate tactical victory, but one born of chaos, desperation, and sheer grit. Exploding mules, stampeding cattle, shotgun duels, and a water-starved charge turned a desert skirmish into a legend. It was a moment where strategy met madness, and where the dream of a Confederate California flickered, if only briefly, in the New Mexico sun. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have sure ideas, we'd love to hear from you.